Okay, so I'm going to get started this morning by just officially welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Sawadee Kap. Nice to see you guys. Good morning to everyone. Those of you guys that are here at the temple and anyone who's tuning in through our live stream, welcome to all of you guys. Today is what we call our group learning program, where each Sunday and Wednesday we get together and I share with you guys teachings on the path to enlightenment from the Buddha, who lived over 2,500 years ago. Everything that I share with you is based on his original teachings to help you be able to get to the enlightened mental state. The enlightened mind is where the mind no longer experiences any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. The mind will only be experiencing peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy. There's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping that someday when you die that something good might happen for you. Instead, you're learning teachings, you're reflecting on those to independently verify them, and then you're practicing them in order to transform the mind. There are certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind, and these 10 individual pollutions are referred to as the 10 fetters, or some people refer to them as taints or pollutions or defilements. When you uproot these out of the mind, this is where the mind starts experiencing the peace and the joy, the radiance and the brightness can shine through. You'll notice that there's focus and concentration, clarity of mind and deep memory. You'll even notice your personal and professional relationships will really blossom because you'll be able to get along with your friends and your family, your coworkers, other people around you. You'll be able to get along with them so much better. You'll notice that you're not even in a bad mood anymore, that all the conditions that cause a bad mood will have been eliminated through training the mind. So we start with meditation as part of this group learning program, and most of our other courses and classes and different things that we teach here, various retreats, we usually start in the morning with meditation. So I'll guide you guys in a meditation session, and then afterwards I will move into sharing some teachings with you based on the first book of this book series. I share a 13-book series, and in this program, each Sunday I go chapter by chapter. Here at the temple at 9 a.m. and then at home I live stream again at 9 p.m. So no matter where you are in the world, there's a live class. It's happening either 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. Thai time. And then they're recorded as well, so students can learn even after the live stream. So whether you're here in Thailand or whether you're traveling around the world, you can learn the path to enlightenment and then train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. So the way that we start is with breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a primary form of training that the Buddha taught in addition to other things as well. You wouldn't be able to just meditate your way to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. So we start with a bit of meditation. If you're sitting on the floor, you might sit with your legs lightly crossed. Some people like to put cushions or multiple cushions under their rear, or even put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and allows the circulation to flow more readily. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. Everybody's body is a bit different, so there's other options here as well. You might decide to put your palms on your thighs, on your knees. Some people like to put their palms up. So you could do this sitting on the floor. You could do it sitting in a chair. Some people use the lying or standing, or even there's a walking position where you can learn in these various positions. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid and uptight, the mind would have a tendency to be overactive. So you would like the upper body to be erect, where the mind can then be attentive and alert during the meditation. I'm going to ease us into meditation by doing some chanting. Some people here are learning chanting. I teach this in various classes, courses, and retreats that I offer. And if you guys would like to learn the chanting, or at least see the chants that we're doing, they're on a laminated sheet on the table over there. You're welcome to get up and get a laminated sheet, or if somebody would like to pass them around. They have the original words that are chanted in the Pali language, and then there's the English translations as well. These aren't a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship. They're not prayer or anything like that. It's really just to help ease the mind into meditation. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory. So once every 2 weeks, they would chant in order to commit the teachings to memory because it was just an oral tradition. They didn't write things down during the lifetime of the Buddha. So they chanted and recited his teachings word for word every 2 weeks to commit them to memory. I suspect that these chants were actually created by his students either during his life or after his death, because as you see through the English translation, there's a lot of respect, a lot of admiration, a lot of gratitude for the Buddha. And a Buddha has eliminated any kind of arrogance or ego or pride or boastfulness. They wouldn't have gone around and taught their students to chant these to himself. He wouldn't have done that. So this would have come from his students either during his life or after his death. And I still chant these because it helps to get some awareness of mind, awareness of the breath, and it helps you to get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But there's nothing mystical or magical that's going on here. As I mentioned, it's not a prayer or a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship. It just helps to bring some awareness to the mind and awareness to the breath and ease you into meditation to actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to chant along, you're welcome to, or you can just, see what we're chanting. Some people might just decide to close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. And then after I do the chanting, I'll come in with some guidance after that. Then after the guidance, there's going to be a period of time where we're just all meditating together. Those of you guys here at the temple, as well as those of you online, we can just be meditating together. Of course, there'll be an occasional sound like a car or a dog might bark, or you might hear a bird chirping, but these things are all impermanent. When you hear those things, you can just let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. You'll hear how it guides you during the meditation. But there'll be a period of time where we're just all meditating. And then we'll come out of the meditation with a chant as well. And then from there, we'll move into learning some teachings that are going to help you to move the mind closer and closer to this enlightened mental state where the mind will be peaceful and joyful. So if you'd like to join along for the meditation and the chanting, feel free. And then after I do the chanting, as I mentioned, I'll come back with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Makewa Otang Makewanhang Apivateyami Savakato Makewata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Makewato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅkhang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti pisu Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sambuddho Sakato Rogavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma sati satatawa manusranam Bhoto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, establishing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาโอตังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโหโตภะคะวะติ If you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I'll just once again welcome all of you guys, those of you guys that started meditating with us and those of you guys that joined us afterwards. Welcome to all of you guys, those of you here at the temple and those of you guys tuning in online. Welcome to our class today. For those of you guys that are new to here, this classroom, to this temple, I just share a couple of things to help you get comfortable with the room and the space. In the back of the room, there's a bathroom, the very last door on the right. So at any time you would like to use the bathroom, feel free to use the restroom. There's even some restrooms outside the classroom. If you go outside and you follow the signs, you'll see the main bathrooms for the temple. And we have some water here that students provide for you guys. If you guys would like some water at any point, we have cups and water. Feel free to help yourself. Just make yourself feel comfortable as much as you would like to come and go or use the restroom or you, drink water. It's up to you. It's your life, your choices, and your results. So feel free to do whatever makes you feel comfortable. I would like to share something with you guys on this meditation before we move into the teachings that I'm going to share with you guys today based on this group learning program. Is for those of you guys that maybe you're just starting meditation or you are brand new to the path to enlightenment, or maybe you've never even meditated before. This might be the first time you've ever meditated. When you're first meditating, it's common for the mind to have lots of thoughts. You might have had lots of rapid thoughts during your meditation. This is very common. It might have been thought. You might not have even realized all those thoughts were in your mind. This is very common. You're not bad at meditation. This is just the mind being untrained, that it will oftentimes have all these rapid thoughts. Or sometimes what you might experience when you're first starting to meditate is you might have a thought during meditation, and then you might follow it or indulge in it for a period of time. time. And you realize 2 or 3 minutes down the road, like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Oh, let me bring the mind back to the breath. So if either of these two things are happening in your meditation, this is completely normal. A lot of people, you're not bad at meditation. You're not going to be a master at meditation when you first start. So it would be unwise to put the expectation on yourself that your mind's going to be very well, very good at meditation when you first start. Instead, realize that everybody starts wherever they start. And if your mind is having lots of rapid thoughts, or you indulge in a thought for a period of time, just use that as motivation and encouragement to see that, yes, you need to continue to meditate and learn and develop your practice so you can get some more control and more discipline of the mind. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll still have thoughts during your meditation. You're not trying to actually eliminate your thoughts during the meditation. What you're trying to do is gain this discipline or this control of the mind. Even in the enlightened mind, you're going to have occasional thoughts during the meditation. But the difference is that you'll notice it and you'll be able to cut it off and let it go very easily. Where in the unenlightened state, you might have had rapid thoughts, or you might have indulged in a thought for a period of time before you realize, like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back. In the enlightened mind, you'll have a thought during meditation, but you'll notice it right away, and you'll be able to easily let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. Peacefulness and joy in the mind. There'll be a quieting of the mind, a stilling of the mind, but there'll still be occasional thoughts even during your meditation. So thoughts aren't a bad thing. Thoughts aren't something that you're trying to eliminate. As long as you're alive, you're going to have thoughts, and you need those in order to help you in life, because there's various thoughts that you have that are wholesome and that are helpful and that are wise and that'll help you in life. And then, of course, there's certain unwholesome thoughts or unwise thoughts. That's what you're working to eliminate as part of the path to enlightenment, and ultimately getting to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, where the mind can just be permanently peaceful and permanently joyful in the enlightened mental state. So this is what you'll experience as you're developing your meditation practice. The ultimate goal of this particular meditation, called breathing mindfulness meditation, is to develop mindfulness or awareness of the mind, to develop concentration or focus, and then to be able to easily let things go. So in meditation, anytime any thoughts coming up, you're cutting off and letting go anything that arises. This is helping you to gain the mindfulness or awareness of mind, the focus or concentration, because you're focused on the breath, a single object in the mind. You notice it with your mindfulness or awareness of mind, and you cut it off and let it go and easily bring the mind back to the breath. And this is how you're training in meditation. Anything that arises, you're doing this with. And remember, you're not trying to eliminate your thoughts. You're gaining that awareness of mind and the ability to easily let them go. So now in daily life, when you're out and about in daily life and you're noticing anger starting to arise because of your mindfulness, awareness of mind, you can start noticing this. If you train in meditation regularly, you'll notice the frustration or the agitation or the annoyance or any other discontent feeling that might be arising. Guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, resentfulness, shyness, displeasure. Anytime you notice any of these discontent feelings arising, if you've cultivated mindfulness, you'll be able to see that, and then you'll be able to cut those off and let them go. Or any unwholesome thoughts that are arising in daily life, you can cut them off and let them go. But in daily life, if you're having wholesome thoughts, like maybe you'd like to take your mom to lunch or dinner, maybe you'd like to go out to lunch with a classmate here, if you notice those wholesome thoughts, you don't need to cut those off in daily life. You can continue forward and do whatever you're going to do and choose to do whatever you would like to do in your life. So you're training in one way where you're cutting off anything that arises just because you're trying to train the mind to easily let go. But in daily life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. And this is the way a professional athlete trains as well. You could have a professional athlete that's maybe like a pole vaulter or something like this. And when they go in the gym, they're going to do weight training, agility training. They might do cardiovascular training. Very different than their pole vaulting. But then when they do their sport, they're going to do pole vaulting, which is very different than what they were doing in the gym. So the same thing is true when you're training your mind. You can almost think of your mind like a muscle, even though it's not. You can exercise this mind much like you would a muscle, and now you become more and more proficient with the qualities of mindfulness or awareness of mind, of concentration, and then be able to easily let things go in daily life. Because what you learn in the teachings of the Buddha is you learn that your mind is actually causing these feelings itself. You may think right now, or you may believe that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. This is typically what the unenlightened mind does because of its lack of wisdom. It will oftentimes blame its feelings on somebody else or some situation. And you'll maybe think that other people are causing you to be angry. But in reality, when you see the teachings of the Buddha, you learn them, you reflect on them to independently verify that they're true, and then you practice them, you can see the truth that your mind is actually causing these feelings itself. And this is the reason why you can eliminate these feelings. Because if everyone else was causing you to be angry, then you might feel like you need to go around and train everyone else to do things your way. And this isn't going to work because there's 8 billion people in the world. You can't train all these people to do things the way that you want. So the mind, with what we call craving, desire, attachment, or wants or expectations, clinging, the mind is longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. And if it gets what it wants, it will get what's called a conditioned pleasant feeling. You will get happy, excited, elated, thrilled, euphoric because you're getting what you want. But in a situation where you don't get what you want, you might get these painful feelings of sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and other painful feelings like this. So essentially, the unenlightened mind is going up and down based on this condition of craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So you might have been in the mall or some other shopping experience, and you noticed that the mind was longing, yearning for something. Like you really wanted that pair of shoes, or you really wanted that brand new phone or that computer or video game or article of clothing or something like that. So your mind chased and chased and chased. And if you got it, you got happy. But that happiness was only temporary. That happiness arose, it changed, and it faded away. Or if you chased after a new job or a new car or maybe a new friend or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you might have chased and chased and chased and just thought that this thing is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. And based on getting your craving fulfilled, the mind got happy. But then that was only temporary. It faded away because the happiness was based on some condition. The condition is, if I get that new pair of shoes, I'll be happy. If I get that, and I'll be happy. If I get that new job or more money or some other thing, I'll be happy. But when I don't have those things anymore, then the mind's going to be sad or angry or frustrated. And this is the mind causing its own discontent feelings due to craving, desire, attachment. And if you understand what's called the universal truth of impermanence, which means everything around you is impermanent, it's temporary. So as long as you have craving and you base your inner feelings on some condition, like getting more money or a new friend or a boyfriend or girlfriend or a job, as long as you base your inner feelings on these things, then because of impermanence and these things are changing, that means your feelings change too. You're not able to get to permanent happiness as long as the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition, like a new job or a new friend or something else. Those feelings will fade away. They will be temporary. And when the mind in the unenlightened state experiences painful feelings of sadness, anger, frustration, what it will typically do is it will typically push people away out of your life. This is called aversion, where the mind falsely believes that the painful feelings that you're experiencing is coming from this person or coming from this situation. So you will typically push this out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't solve the problem because you get angry or irritated about something else. It's just a matter of time before something else comes up that the mind becomes irritated or angry about. So the mind will either push people or push the situation away, or you'll become bitter and harsh and hostile at someone, maybe through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, and they might choose to leave out of your life. Or you might put your expectations on somebody, trying to get to them to do things your way. This is the mind trying to control the situation around you, where you're trying to get those cravings fulfilled. And the mind just thinks, if I can get what I want, everything will be perfect. But you can't get what you want permanently because of the universal truth of impermanence. So as long as the unenlightened mind misunderstands what the problem is, then it's going to keep experiencing this over and over and over again. This is what we call wrong view, that the mind has this wrong view. It doesn't understand true reality. It thinks that the painful feelings is coming from something external, so the mind will push that away. It'll become bitter and harsh and hostile, or it'll put your expectations on somebody and trying to control that individual. And now the number of people you can spend time with in the world becomes fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. As your expectations grow, it's only a matter of time before somebody doesn't meet your expectations, and now you either push them away, you become bitter and harsh and hostile, or put your expectations on someone. You're not a bad person, of course. This is just the mind lacking wisdom. It doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. Some people refer to this as ignorance, but I don't use this word very often because it's more of a derogatory or degrading word today, and a Buddha, an enlightened being, doesn't actually refer to individuals in a derogatory and demeaning way. Instead, this word unknowing, or this phrase unknowing of true reality, is a better way to explain it. Or some people use the word confusion or misunderstanding or misperception. The unenlightened mind has this confusion, this misunderstanding, this confusion, thinking that the painful feelings that you're experiencing is coming from something external. So that's why it pushes away, becomes bitter and harsh and hostile, or put expectations on people, trying to control them to do things your way. So as long as you don't understand the problem, then you'll continue to experience the agitation and annoyance and stress and anxiety over and over. But when you understand the problem, and you understand the solution to that problem, then you can implement those solutions, and now you can experience real results. So that's what the teachings of the Buddha are about, is about learning the mind, learning the natural laws of existence around you, learning how the mind functions, learning how the world around you functions, so that then you can train your mind and get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. The teachings of the Buddha aren't about believing a bunch of things and then hoping that when you die, something wonderful occurs for you. It's not about rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. You might see these things associated with Buddhism in different places, but the Buddha actually never taught these things. If you go back to the original teachings of the Buddha, you'll see that he didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. But now, 2,500 years later, there's been all these modifications that people have made to his teachings, and sometimes you can go into an environment that is considered to be Buddhist, and you'll see people doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. But what the Buddha was really doing is he was training people. He was helping them to understand what it took for him to get to this enlightened mental state. And he was just sharing with you through guidance of what it took for him to get to that enlightened mental state. He wasn't trying to convince you of anything. He wasn't trying to force you to do anything. He didn't give you rules or commandments to live your life by. He wasn't trying to guilt, shame, or fear you into doing anything. Instead, he was just sharing with you what it took for him to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. And if you're interested in learning how to accomplish that, then his teachings are available to you to be able to help you accomplish that same mental state. So what you do on this path is you learn teachings, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them. And as you're practicing them, you're uprooting these pollutions out of the mind, and this is where your mind starts to experience more and more of the qualities of the enlightened mind. Not only the peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy, but that focus and concentration, the clarity of mind, the deep memory, with your personal and professional relationships drastically improving and blossoming to the point where you're not arguing and you're not bitter and harsh and having animosity in your relationships, to the point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore. So this topic that I have to share with you is part of chapter 13 of this book series, volume 1, chapter 13. It's titled Identifying Your Cravings, Cultivating Non-Craving and Analysis of the Mind. We're in chapter 13 of this book series because this group learning program started back about 4 months ago or so. We're a little over halfway through this group learning program, but students join it at multiple different times in the year. So you don't have to necessarily join at the very, very beginning of the group learning program. Different people will start the program at different times, and we repeat it every 7 months. It just continues to repeat over and over and over again. But I gave you that background that I just shared with you about what's causing the discontent mind, because this topic that I'm sharing today, identifying your cravings, is a way to go in and identify what are your individual cravings, desires, attachments, and then be able to almost surgically remove them. As you're learning on the path to enlightenment, you usually start with what's called the 3 universal truths and the 4 noble truths. The 4 noble truths is where you can have this breakthrough to understanding what the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. The problem in the unenlightened mind is discontent feelings, conditional feelings. This is where the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. If I get what I want, you get happy. If you don't get what you want, you get sad or frustrated. The mind's moving through these pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. These are conditional feelings that the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. But those conditions aren't permanent. So the mind goes up and down and up and down. It becomes unstable. It gets shaken up. That's the problem, the discontent feelings. The cause of that problem is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the pulling towards the objects of your affection, chasing after something, thinking the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So again, if you get what you want, you get those pleasant feelings. And if you don't get what you want, you get the painful feelings. And sometimes these things are so far away from each other that you don't even notice what's going on. And that's what a Buddha does, is they awaken to this wisdom on their own to be able to share it with you to help you understand what the mind's experiencing. So for example, if you had a brand new job and you chased after that job and you really wanted that job badly, you might have actually gotten that job with all the work and effort that you put in to get it. And you might have felt really happy and really excited when you got that job. But then maybe 5 years later, you might have got laid off. The company might have went out of business. You might have got fired for any particular reason. And now you're sad and you're frustrated. This is the mind craving and longing and yearning, wanting this job to be permanent. When you first got the job, you got happy and excited. You thought it was the best job ever. But now you didn't understand that that job is not permanent, that this job is impermanent. Everything around you is impermanent. But with the mind craving permanence, when things start changing, when you start experiencing impermanence, the mind will end up in these painful feelings of sadness, anger, and others. The same thing is happening if you've ever had a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you came together. When you first got together, you get all these pleasant feelings. You felt really great. You felt happy, excited. Someone was showing you attention. They were showing you affection. Maybe they were taking you out to dinner or to the movies. Maybe you guys were going out together on a date. Maybe you were even having great conversations or intimate contact with each other at different times. There was all this pleasure associated with this relationship. And now the mind over time started becoming more and more discontent as your expectations grew and you wanted more and more in this relationship. For whatever reason, you guys broke up and the relationship was over. And then you might have felt sad or angry or frustrated or lonely or bored, or you might have missed this person, or you might have felt sad or frustrated. This is because the mind's craving, it's longing, it's yearning, it's wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality, this relationship was always impermanent, and the mind just didn't understand that. Or if you had a brand new car or something else and it got a scratch on it, you might have came out and noticed this brand new car that you have had a scratch on it. You might have got frustrated or angry. It's not the scratch that's causing that. It's not the person who caused the scratch that's causing the mind to be angry. It's the mind craving for this car to look permanently beautiful. We're not talking about what's wise or unwise here in this particular example, because obviously we all aspire to not scratch somebody else's car. But if we never got a scratch on our car, that would be permanence. That means we live in a world where everything around us is permanent. But that's not the world that we live in. We live in an impermanent world where we're going to eventually get a scratch on the car, or the paint's going to fade, or the upholstery is going to get ripped, or the window washers are going to need to be changed, or the tires are going to need to be changed. All these things are impermanent. Whereas if the mind's craving for this car to be permanently beautiful, when you start experiencing impermanence with this car, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. So this is happening all throughout your life, where the mind is having various cravings. And as long as you allow the mind to continue to crave, you'll continue to experience discontent feelings where the mind's going up and down and up and down. So you learn this through the second noble truth, and you can independently verify it, because you can look at a time when you've recently been angry or frustrated or irritated, either this morning or yesterday or last week. And while in that situation, you might have been looking around for someone to blame or something to blame, which is common, which the unenlightened mind does. Instead, with this wisdom to understand that your mind is causing these discontent feelings through craving, desire, attachment, you can look at that same situation and figure out, what was it that you were craving? What was it that you were longing and yearning for? While at that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else for what you were experiencing. Now with these new eyes, now with this new wisdom, this new understanding, look at that same situation. There was something your mind was longing and yearning for. There was something you wanted or expected. And when you didn't get it, you got frustrated or agitated or angry. So you can independently verify that your mind is causing its own discontent feelings. Even though you may have not thought about this in the past, if you're interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha and getting to this enlightened mental state where you eliminate this up and down of the mind, you're going to need to look inward. You're going to need to be very honest and objective with the mind and be able to see the truth that yes, the mind is indeed causing its own discontent feelings. And the real power in that is if you can see that your mind is causing these discontent feelings and you can take responsibility and accountability for these feelings, then you can actually eliminate them. But as long as you continue to believe that other people are causing you to be angry, you'll continue to be frustrated over and over and over again. And you might continue to try to change other people to do things your way. But if you can do this inner work to improve the condition of your mind through training the mind, not only with meditation, but with other things as well, now you can actually get to a real solution. And you can see the peace and the joy coming into the mind. As you go forward on the path to enlightenment with training your mind, you'll notice more peace and more joy coming into the mind because you're really addressing the true problem, which is inside the mind, rather than continue to falsely believe that somebody else or something external is causing your discontent feelings. So that's what this chapter is actually about, is helping you to be able to identify these cravings, because there's generalized training that you can do in order to generally start eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments. Breathing mindfulness meditation that we did this morning is one of those things. And then also practicing generosity, where you're giving and sharing more than strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. You share your time, your effort, your energy, your resources. This is helpful for the mind because with craving, desire, attachment in the mind will tend to hold on. You will tend to crave. You will tend to be selfish in the mind. So when you're practicing generosity, where you're giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources, you're training the mind to let go. You're not having any expectation of wanting something back, because that's typically what the unenlightened mind will do, is if I do this, I want this in return. But what you would like to do is get to the point where you can give and share in situations without any expectation of anything in return. And breathing mindfulness meditation coupled with generosity will gradually train the mind to let go. And then you start learning what I'm sharing here. Because as part of this group learning program, I've already shared something called the Eightfold Path, which is a core central teaching of the Buddha that everything else plugs into. And this is where you learn all the various teachings to actually train your mind to get to enlightenment. And students who have been learning since the beginning of the program would be practicing that now for about 3 to 4 months. And some of you guys have been learning with me much longer than that, and you've been practicing it longer than that. But as you get the Eightfold Path up and running and you start getting your arms around that teaching and implementing it into your life, you then learn this, what I'm going to share with you today, which is how to identify the individual cravings in your mind so that it's not just applying the general training of breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, but it's also applying this technique that I'm going to share with you guys here. But first, what I do is I share with you guys what is a craving, desire, attachment. Because when I teach these classes, there's oftentimes new people that are coming in to learn, and they haven't necessarily learned what I taught previously. So I like to just review, for those of you guys that have been studying with me for a little while, what is craving, desire, attachment. And for those of you guys that are maybe learning for the first time, it'll help you to understand this before we go into helping you learn this technique to almost surgically go in and eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, so you can get free from these strong feelings and you can liberate the mind from all those discontent feelings. So a craving, desire, attachment, or wants or expectation, grasping, holding, clinging, this is the mental longing for something with a strong eagerness, chasing after the objects of your affection, wanting something to be pleasing all the time. The mind craves permanence in the unenlightened state. It's longing, yearning for things to be a certain way. And once again, if you get what you want, you get those conditioned pleasant feelings, which are ultimately unsatisfying because they're only temporary. They arise, they change, and they fade away. You'll experience this happiness or excitement only temporarily, and your mind will ultimately end up in the sadness or frustration or some other discontent feeling. So this longing, yearning, the mind pulling towards the objects of its affection. It's almost like the mind thinks the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind will chase after it and chase after it and chase after it. And it's only in these conditions that the mind can experience happiness. If you get this, if you get this, if you get this. If my bank account is this, or my mom calls me, or my boss does this, or my friends do this, I will then be happy. But then when those conditions don't get met, the mind will move to the sadness, anger, frustration, or others. So you're looking to get liberated from all of that. If you're on the path to enlightenment, you're interested in letting go of all these conditions and now walking the middle way and making wise decisions that are going to lead to the peacefulness and joy being permanent in the mind. You can get to what's called unconditioned peacefulness, unconditioned joy. But as long as these cravings are in the mind, you can't get to that unconditioned peacefulness and unconditioned joy because the mind is forming its inner feelings based on these cravings, desires, attachments. So these cravings, desires, attachments is the cause of the discontent mind. The unenlightened mind is experiencing these cravings continuously. And even when you end up in the painful feelings like sadness, anger, and others, you might immediately start craving because the unenlightened mind doesn't understand how to get away from those painful feelings. So this is why if you've ever experienced sadness or anger or something like this, and you chocolate or ice cream or cake or something like this, if you've turned to those kinds of things based in emotion, this is because the mind is experiencing those painful feelings and it doesn't have the wisdom of how to eliminate those painful feelings. It doesn't know what the cause is. So the only way that the unenlightened mind, the untrained mind, knows how to get back to something that is somewhat comfortable is to then crave. And you might have turned to food, or you might have turned to sex or gambling or alcohol or drugs or some other thing that the mind chases after. You might have went shopping to try to buy something in order to get some kind of pleasant feeling to come into the mind. But then ultimately the mind ends right back up in the painful feelings because then it hasn't eliminated the true problem, which is the craving, desire, attachment. The mind's just continuing to crave and is getting pleasant feelings for a temporary basis based on some other craving. And now it ultimately ends up in the painful feelings again. The craving, desire, attachment is part of what we call the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires. This is something I taught back in chapter 8. We call it craving, anger, and ignorance, or greed, hatred, and delusion. These are the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots. And the Four Noble Truths explains this as the cause of the discontent feelings. It helps you to remedy the discontent feelings by eliminating the cravings, desires, attachments. And it's breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, which is the generalized training to be able to help you do that. This craving, desire, attachment, not only is it causing the discontent feelings, but this is also the cause of continuous rebirth in the world. You may not at this point in time have the wisdom to understand the cycle of rebirth, but you can actually independently verify the cycle of rebirth. Remember, nothing on the path to enlightenment is based in belief. So right now, you might believe that you only have one life, and that's just because maybe you previous lives, or somebody told you that you only had one life, but that's just a belief. You don't have any independent verification that you only have one life, but you can actually independently verify through various aspects of the world. As you peer into the cycle of rebirth, you can actually independently verify that this is indeed what is actually happening. As someone's first starting on the path to enlightenment, I don't necessarily suggest that they approach the cycle of rebirth and tackle that right away. There's core central teachings that it's much wiser to approach those first. So I suggest students set the cycle of rebirth to the side when they first get started, because what's happened in the past is in the past. It doesn't matter right now. What may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It doesn't matter right now. If you focus on the core central teachings of things like the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, meditation training, things like this is where you're going to see significant rebirth. The only reason why any of us are here is because in our previous lives, we didn't eliminate our cravings, desires, attachments. The mind's still holding on. We're continuing to be reborn over and over and over again in the world. And if we eliminate the craving, desire, attachment, not only do we eliminate discontentedness, but we eliminate the causes and conditions that are leading to rebirth. While there are certain things about life that are quite wonderful and quite enjoyable, there's probably certain misery, certain sadness, certain grief that you're not interested in repeating over and over and over again. So you can get liberated from all of this. You can not only escape the discontent feelings, but you can escape this continuous rebirth by eliminating craving, desire, attachment in the mind. And you'll be able to see this as occurring because as you're eliminating the cravings, the mind will become more peaceful and more joyful, more concentrated, more focused. You'll see more improvement to the condition of the mind and the condition of your life. So now just a little bit more about craving, desire, attachment. Then I'm going to share with you guys how to identify cravings and cultivate non-craving and analysis of the mind. The number one goal on the path to enlightenment is to eliminate discontentedness. And to eliminate discontentedness, you need to eliminate cravings, desires, attachments. But how could you ever eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments if you didn't know how to identify them? So I'm going to teach you how to identify inside the mind the longing, the yearning that it does. By identifying craving, desire, attachments, you're building the second most important skill that you could ever develop on the path to enlightenment. Meditation is the first thing that is a real skill or tool or technique or ability that you're developing on the path to enlightenment. And that's something that people oftentimes prioritize when you first get started, along with learning other teachings. But there's this other skill, there's this other ability that you need to cultivate, which is the ability to identify your cravings, desires, attachments. This is the second most important thing that you could develop, because as you're out and about in the world, if you're able to identify your cravings, desires, attachments, then you can target them and you can eliminate them through almost surgically removing them, as I'm going to show you today. This breathing mindfulness meditation is training the mind to let go. It's helping you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment in general, but it's through identifying your cravings, using right mindfulness, which right mindfulness is awareness of mind, having this awareness of the mind that you're developing meditation, but you're practicing in daily life. This is what's going to help you to be able to identify your cravings. Once you identify your cravings with right mindfulness or this awareness of mind, then you apply what's called right effort outside of your meditation in order to eliminate these unwholesome qualities. What right effort is, as part of the Eightfold Path, is to apply the effort to eliminate unwholesome qualities from your mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. I went through this in detail at other times in this program, and I have various books and audiobooks and videos, podcasts, things like this to be able to help you learn these things. This right mindfulness and right effort is part of the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path. And it's helping you to develop the qualities to be aware of the mind and then be able to apply the effort to cut those unwholesome qualities off and eliminate them out of the mind. But then to support and encourage the wholesome qualities in the mind. So this is working together with what I'm going to teach you today. And this is part of that mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path, which is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. All of these are working together in order to help you accomplish what it is I'm going to teach you now. But before I move on, are there any questions that you guys have on anything that I've been discussing? You guys can ask those questions here at the temple. Those of you guys here at the temple, if you guys would like to ask questions, we have microphones in the white bowl there. If you could just turn that on and use that microphone, that way the folks online will be able to hear you. And for those of you guys online, you can ask your question by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any question that you like. So does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am. You have a question? Would you mind getting the microphone in the white bowl there right in front of the camera?
Okay, That works. So I'm wondering, what if you understand that nothing is permanent, and the other teachings like there's no self, but you can't make peace with that, so you struggle to accept that.
Yeah, so if you're not, you should never just accept teachings. What you would like to do is independently verify them. So let's take this one of impermanence, for example, right? So when you learn it, you learn that things are constantly changing, that everything around you is impermanent, right? You learn that as a teaching. But now what you do is you independently verify it so that you can get to wisdom and you can know that it's true. This is what you're awakening to. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment, you're awakening to the wisdom of these natural laws of existence that are around you. So now you try to independently verify, is this true? That the universal truth of impermanence is describing all these things around you are impermanent. So you start with something that you're familiar with, like this human body. Is this body permanent or impermanent? What would you? It's impermanent, right? It's constantly changing, it's growing. You get a pimple, you get a mole, you get a wrinkle, a gray hair. The color of your hair changes. We get extra weight here and there. So you can see that this body is impermanent. Then you look at things like your relationships. Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, right? People are constantly coming and going in and out of your life. If your relationships were permanent, you'd have the exact same people in your life all the way through your life. Then you look at things like your bank account. Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? Impermanent. And your job, is it permanent or impermanent? Impermanent. What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? Also impermanent, right? So you can go around the world and you can look and you can be walking on the sidewalk and you see a crack. That's impermanence, or the height of the sidewalk, or the color, or the texture. You can see on the walls of the temple, this is all impermanence. The floor that you're sitting on, this class, we're all together now, but we'll eventually be over. There was a certain number of people here when we started, and then there was more people who came, and then there might be a few people who end up leaving at different points. This is all impermanence. So you can see this all around you. So rather than accepting it, you independently verify it by trying to disprove it. If you can find something around it, then you've disproven it. So you don't need to accept it. You need to independently verify it. So now you know that it's true. And then you can observe how your mind is craving permanence, wanting things to be permanent. And now you start slowly realizing that it's kind of silly for this mind to keep doing that, because as long as you keep craving permanence, living in this impermanent world, you'll constantly be upset. You'll constantly be frustrated or agitated. So there's various training like breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity that's going to train the mind to let go. And then there's what I'm going to teach you today as well, to surgically go in, identifying these cravings and then surgically removing them. And then as you're doing that, that's where you see the more peace and the more joy. And you get to the point where you don't have any doubt in these teachings, that you know that they're true. You're not accepting them. You're not believing in them. You're learning, you're reflecting to independently verify, and then you're practicing. And now as you're practicing, you're seeing the truth more and more, and you're gaining this wisdom of how to train the mind. And as you see more and more peace coming into the mind, you know that you're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, so it's also letting go of the craving that things are different from what they are, in the sense of that things are permanent in general. This is not a truth that things are impermanent, but that the truth is actually that things are permanent. Craving that.
The truth is that everything, the truth is that everything around you is impermanent, but the mind craves permanence. It wants things to be permanent. And as long as you allow the mind to keep doing that, you won't ever be able to experience peace and joy. So the mind's born with this lack of wisdom, or this unknowing of true reality. Essentially, a way to say that the mind craves permanence is to say the mind does not like impermanence. The mind doesn't like change. As soon as things start changing, the mind's like, I don't like this, right? It's like a 2-year-old kid throwing a temper tantrum. Like, no, I want my permanence. I want my permanence. Give me my permanence. And it's like, the mind's sad and angry and frustrated. So you're training the mind to no longer do that, but it takes time. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Some people think the Buddha meditated and then instantly got to enlightenment, but it's not actually true. He had this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress over 6 years. So that's the same thing that you'll need to experience as well. So you're gradually learning the Eightfold Path, but using the original words of the Buddha. If you haven't studied the original words of the Buddha, you are oftentimes being misguided or misled. So all the resources that I share are the original teachings of the Buddha in his words, so that you can learn them, you can reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them in order to uproot these pollutions. So he's providing you these guidance, these tools and techniques of how to uproot these pollutions out of the mind, so that then you'll be able to experience more peace and more joy. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions here at the temple on anything I've shared so far? I see some questions coming in here online. Let me see what those are. My eyes are not so good. Let me get the mic so I can read it for you guys, and you guys will understand what I'm sharing as an answer. So EY on Zoom is asking how to deal with aversion from others simply due to things we have done that is not aligned to their views. Okay, so EY, you're going to notice that people are going to have aversion because they're not on the path to enlightenment. They have wrong views. So based in their cravings, they're noticing that they're having painful feelings, and they're going to think that that's coming from you. So they're going to push you aside. And if somebody's doing that, that's their choice. You can't change that. You can't force it. The only thing you can do is not to have craving and clinging to them. Because if you have craving and clinging to them and they push you aside, you're going to feel painful feelings because you're holding on to them, wanting them to be permanent. So if somebody else chooses to push you aside based on their wrong view and having aversion, then that's their choice. You can't change that. But you can change what's going on in your mind. You can get to the point where you don't have craving and clinging in your relationships, so that way, if somebody does choose to push you aside, you won't experience any painful feelings. And this comes with training, the breathing mindfulness meditation, the generosity, what I'm going to teach you today. But in terms of individuals, there's actually ways to eliminate craving, desire, attachment to people that are close to you. I just taught this in a course last week, and it's also recorded on our YouTube channel and our podcast. If you have any issues finding that online class that I taught, you can let me know and I'll send you the link. It's called How to Eliminate Attachment to Those Who Are Closest to Us. So like your parents, your sibling, life partner, your brothers, your sisters, friends, people like this that are really close to you. The mind has a tendency to get attached to them, but you can get to the point where you're in these relationships and you have these relationships, but you're just not attached. And you can actually have a much more fulfilling relationship that way. It's just that the mind doesn't know how to do that in the unenlightened state. So by cultivating the wisdom to learn how to eliminate your attachments to these people and then still have the relationship is important. And then learning how, as you create new relationships, not to get attached in those relationships. That's what will protect your mind. So learning how to love, learning how to be fulfilled and have satisfying relationships without attachment is what the mind needs to do to be able to be protected when somebody pushes you aside, that you don't get angry or frustrated or any other painful feelings. EY has another question here. He says, how to reduce craving for multisensory desires, orbiting experience, such as a holiday or a craving for holiday, wholesome, unwholesome thought, or neither. So the craving, desire, attachment, it's coming from, one moment. The craving, desire, attachment is coming from the pollution in the mind that the Buddha describes as central desire. This is one of the 10 fetters. There's 10 individual fetters in the mind, 10 pollutions or 10 taints. What central desire is this is the longing, yearning through the sense bases. There's 6 sense bases. There's the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. You might have learned 5 sense bases as you were learning in school. But the Buddha includes the mind as the 6th sense base for a reason, in its central desire. When we talk about it generally as craving, desire, attachment, we just talk about it generally as craving, desire, attachment. But what's really going on is the mind is longing, yearning through these 6 sense bases, wanting permanently agreeable contact. So if you see things with your eyes that you have a certain craving about and it's agreeable to you, meaning that your cravings getting fulfilled, you will then get the pleasant feelings. But if you see something disagreeable, you will get painful feelings. The same thing is happening with the ear. If you hear things that are agreeable to you, you will get pleasant feelings. And if you hear things that are disagreeable, you'll get painful feelings. I'll give you an example with the ear. So say that you're at a stoplight in a car and someone pulls up next to you with certain music that you find to be really good. You have a craving for this music, right? And you're like, yeah, that's my jam. All right. Yeah, let's have some fun. You're like dancing in your seat. You're at the stoplight like, oh, this is so fun. Yeah, look at all that music. Oh, I'm so excited. But then you pull up to the next stoplight and now someone pulls up to you with a different type of music. And now, because of your craving, you don't like this music. This music is disagreeable to you. And now you're frustrated, you're irritated, you're angry. So this is the mind having craving. It's longing and yearning through the ears for permanently agreeable contact with sounds that are agreeable to you. And if you get that, you'll get those pleasant feelings. But those feelings are based on the condition of hearing something that you find agreeable. And now when the mind hears something disagreeable based on your craving, you'll find that to be painful. And now you'll have sadness, frustration, or other discontent feelings. So this is not only occurring through the eyes and the ears, but it's occurring through the nose. This is the odors, have certain flavors on the tongue, certain bodily contact with physical objects, and then certain mental objects. There might be certain pleasurable or painful things in your past that you think about, and now in the present moment, you're experiencing either pleasant feelings or painful feelings based on something that the mind's clinging to from the past. If you had something pleasurable or painful happen to you in the past, your mind right now in the present moment can experience pleasant or painful feelings based on things in the past. And the same thing can happen for the future. The mind can be longing, yearning for certain things in the future, experiencing pleasant or painful feelings. Maybe for those of you guys that are traveling to Thailand, before you came to Thailand, you might have gotten so excited. Yay, I'm going to Thailand. I can't wait to get out of here. Yay, let's go. Come on. Maybe 3 months, 6 months before you came to Thailand, you were so excited. But then when you showed up to the airport and your flight was delayed or it was canceled, you might have been frustrated or angry or irritated because the mind's craving, it's longing, it's yearning. It wants those pleasant feelings. It wants to show up to Thailand and get those excited, pleasant feelings. So EY, what's going on in the mind is these central desire is longing, yearning through these 6 sense spaces. The 6 sense spaces are the doorways that are bringing in contact, and now the mind is either getting pleasant feelings or painful feelings based on its cravings. So what we're talking about through All Out, the Path to Enlightenment, and today is about how to eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments, so that the mind's no longer doing this, that you just experience contact. You understand impermanence, that it's not possible for every single airplane to take off as scheduled. It's just not possible. That's what the unenlightened mind wants. It wants every flight you're on to be on time. But it's not possible because of impermanence. Every single plane cannot take off at exactly the scheduled time. Something's going to happen. Either the gate's going to be delayed or the workers are going to be delayed. Maybe the tire's flat on the airplane. Maybe there's some service to happen. Maybe the pilot didn't show up. There could be any number of things that could happen. Impermanence can happen, and now this flight is delayed. So if you base your inner feelings on whether this flight is on time or whether it's delayed, my goodness, if you fly enough, you're going to be pretty frustrated because these planes are going to be off schedule at certain times. They're going to get canceled, right? So when you're talking about EY, it doesn't matter the topic. It doesn't matter whether it's a holiday or anything else. The mind is longing, yearning. It's this craving, and you can address it in the same way through breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, and through what I'm going to teach you today to target these individual cravings. So whether it's Christmas, whether it's some other holiday, no matter what it is, the mind's doing the exact same thing. It's just craving and longing, yearning through these sense spaces, wanting things to be permanently agreeable, not understanding impermanence in the universal. You need to remind yourself of impermanence. When you show up to the airport and you see the flight's delayed, well, of course it's delayed. That's impermanence. It's only a matter of time. If you fly enough, you're going to be on a delayed flight or a canceled flight even. It's going to happen. And when you see it happen, of course, right? Or you drop your mobile phone and the screen breaks. Well, of course that just happened, right? Because this phone is impermanent. It's going to happen eventually if you carry around a mobile phone. All these things are going to occur. But as long as your mind's craving permanence, wanting these things to be permanent, when you're experiencing impermanence, the mind will be shaken up by that. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions here. Oops, what did I do? Okay, questions here. So I'm going to move on and share with you guys now what I need to share with you guys on this particular topic. So when the mind has craving, desire, attachment, there's this longing, yearning, there's this craving for agreeable contact. And if you get what you want, you'll get those pleasant feelings. These are conditioned feelings. And they're ultimately unsatisfying because they're conditional. They arise, they change, and they fade away. Your mind's going to ultimately end up in the painful feelings at some point. These are called discontent feelings. What you're interested to get to is these unconditioned qualities of mind of peacefulness and joy, among others. So as long as these cravings are in there, you're going to experience these conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. And as you do, you use these discontent feelings like a red light on the dashboard of your car. If you had a car and you were driving down the street and you saw the red light come on the dashboard, you would say, okay, this car's got an issue. It's got to be pulled over, right? And if you have a little bit of skills, you might even pop open the hood and you might start looking around to see if there's something that you can figure out, because you might have skills to be able to solve this problem with the car. If you don't have the skills, you might just take the car to a mechanic and say, hey, can you take a look at the car? I've got a red light on the dashboard of my car. There's some problem in this car and I'd like to figure it out, because continuing to drive this car would be very unwise. So these discontent feelings are the same thing. The sadness, the anger, the frustration, the agitation, the annoyance, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the stress, the anxiety, the boredom, the loneliness, the shyness, the resentment, even those conditioned pleasant feelings when you're getting so happy because mom's coming to visit, or so happy because your boyfriend or girlfriend called you, or your husband or wife called you or came to visit you, or something like this. Those conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant, that is the red light on your board saying, hey, you've got some issues in the mind. You've got some cravings, desires, attachments that are causing these discontent feelings. And now you pull over and you look inward. You look inward to try to identify, what are these cravings, desires, attachments? What's the mind longing, yearning for? And if it gets what it wants, it gets those pleasant feelings. And if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings. And in some situations, you're going to have the ability to be able to identify what your cravings are. But in some situations, you need to take your car to the mechanic. Your mechanic is your Buddhist teacher, that you might need to come and see your teacher. Or you might need to schedule an online appointment where we can meet in Zoom. You might need to come here to the temple. Maybe you invite your teacher to meet you at a restaurant or a smoothie shop or at a park or something. And you sit down and you say, hey, teacher, here's what's going on. I left for work the other day and I was gone for a few hours, and I came back home, and my house, my wife had all these things all over the house, and I got so frustrated and I got so angry. I don't understand what my cravings are. How did I cause this discontent feelings of frustration in my mind? I left, the house looked one way. I thought it was wonderful. And when I came back, it looked completely different. And I don't understand how I caused these discontent feelings, because my wife's the one who put all that stuff all over the house. I didn't do it. Okay, well, now when the student explains this to me, now I can share with them, your mind's craving for the house to look one particular way permanently. When you left in the morning, the house looked a certain way, and you're craving for the house to look that way. But when you came back, your mind got confronted with this impermanence. Your wife had a craft project around the house, and the house is not going to permanently look the way it did when you left in the morning. So when you came back craving for the house to look a certain way, your mind, not comfortable with that impermanence, then it became frustrated or agitated and annoyed. And just like the house can't permanently look the way it did when you went to work, when you came back and you saw your wife had her craft project all over the house, that's not permanent either. She's going to put it away. And maybe you might even help her put it away. right? So this is how a student sometimes might come to their teacher and say, hey, this is a situation going on. I have no idea why my mind is doing this. What are my cravings, desires, attachments? Helping them to see that. In some cases, you might actually think you know what the cravings, desires, attachments are, and you'd like to just check in with your teacher and say, hey, this is the situation. This is what my cravings, desires, attachments are potentially, and I'd like to just confirm with you I'm on the right track here. So this is how you develop your skill. This is how you develop your ability. After doing this a few times, you'll have that skill, you'll have that ability, you'll be able to figure this out on your own. But as you're first getting started, you might need the help of a teacher to guide you and point out to you where your cravings, desires, attachments are. And then as you build this skill, just like with meditation, you'll be able to do it on your own. You won't need your teacher all the time. But maybe the first 3 times, 5 times, who knows? Maybe initially you can identify these cravings pretty well, but maybe 6 months down the road, something happens, the mind becomes discontent, and you can't figure out what your cravings are. And that's where you might reach out to your teacher, and we're here to help you. So this process of eliminating discontentedness is you use this red light on the dashboard. The discontentedness is the red light on the dashboard, alerting you that craving, desire, attachment is in the mind. So when you see that there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind based on these discontent feelings, that's the first indicator, that you use the discontent feelings as the indicator, as the red light. But then once you see that, you reflect on this, right? You're going to need to calm down after the mind becomes discontent, calm down. But then the second step is start reflecting, start looking inward. The enlightened mind's going to want to do when you get angry and frustrated and all these other discontent feelings is you're going to want to blame somebody else. You're going to start looking around you. Who can I blame? My sister, my brother, my mom, my dad, my boss, my neighbors. Somebody's to blame here. Because the unenlightened mind has a certain amount of ego in the mind. There's a certain amount of arrogance, right? It can't be you. You're perfect, right? You can't be causing these discontent feelings. It's got to be somebody else. It can't be you. No, it's your own mind that's doing this. So when you calm down, start looking inward, start reflecting. What are your cravings, desires, attachments? What is the mind longing, yearning for? What is it wanting? And if you get that thing, you get pleasant feelings. Happiness, excitement, elation. And if you don't get it, you get painful feelings, sadness, frustration, and others. So start looking inward and trying to discover what is the mind longing, yearning for. Early in practice, it can actually be multiple things. Any one particular bout of discontentedness, it could actually be more than one craving, desire, attachment. The more intense your feelings are, the stronger your feelings are, the more deeply held the attachments are, and possibly the more attachments they are. If it's just one simple thing, like you'd like to get that chocolate bar and you don't get the chocolate bar, you might be a little irritated. You have kind of a smaller craving, something kind of on the lighter end of the spectrum. But then if it's something more significant, like maybe somebody beats up your mom, or maybe somebody stole something from your mom, or maybe somebody steals your car, and in your car, maybe you even had some money or some other personal objects that are really important to you. With these cravings that are more strong and deeply held, you might have deeper, stronger emotions, a lot of anger and frustration. Where with this chocolate bar, it's still a craving, but it's a little bit lighter. So the feelings are just a little bit agitated or something like that, right? So when you start noticing these discontent feelings arising, with step 1, that's the red light on your dashboard. Then as your mind calms down and you train your mind to be more calm, then number 2, you start reflecting inward. You start looking, what am I craving? What am I attached to? What are you wanting to be permanent? There's something the mind's wanting to be permanent. And now when you experience impermanence, your mind doesn't like it. Once you start reflecting inwardly and you see these cravings, then number 3 is you develop a plan to eliminate the specific craving, desire, attachment that's causing these discontent feelings. And now, as you consistently develop your breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, you do this specific little plan, which I'm going to give you some examples so you understand what I'm talking about. You create this little plan for yourself to now eliminate that craving, desire, attachment. And as you're eliminating that craving, desire, attachment, this is where the mind's becoming more liberated, more peaceful, more joyful. And then this 3-step process, is just repeat this over and over. This is like a methodology or a best practice of how you do it. So let me give you an example. One time I left my house and I realized that I left my mobile phone at home. And when I realized it, I was only about 5 or 10 minutes down the road, and I reached for my phone and it wasn't there. And I noticed this fear coming up in the mind. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do if I get in an accident or if I have a medical emergency? How am I going to get in touch with anybody? There was this fear that came up. And immediately the mind wanted to pull a U-turn and go back to the house and get this phone. But I recognized this was a craving. The mind was longing, yearning, wanting this phone to be permanent, not realizing that this phone is impermanent. Turning around to go get the phone doesn't solve the problem. That just allows the mind to continue to crave it, continue to hold on to it, and wanting this permanence. So instead of turning around to go get the phone, I implemented this plan where I was going to then put the mind in the situation that it found to be uncomfortable. I decided to continue on in my day. And even though I was only planning to be outside for about an hour and a half, I extended the amount of time that I was outside. I went to the movies, I went to have dinner, I stayed out for about 5 or 6 hours instead of just the hour and a half to do the simple things I was planning to do. I put the mind in the situation that it found to be uncomfortable, which is to be away from the mobile phone. And it was a challenge for a period of time. And then over the next several weeks, about every 2 or 3 days or so, I would intentionally leave the phone at home, training the mind that sometimes you're going to be able to have the phone with you and sometimes you're not. I introduced some impermanence into the mind, into my life, where sometimes I left the phone at home, sometimes I take it with me. And each time I noticed the agitation becoming less and less and less because the mind was letting go of the craving more and more and more. As this craving was getting out of the mind, the agitation became less and less and less. And then I felt like this enough. I think I did it maybe 3, 4, 5 times. I felt like, all right, this craving was gone. Then about 2 months after that, I accidentally left the phone at home again. I was driving down the road. I reached for the phone and it wasn't there. And I was like, all right, oh well, the phone's at home. I just kept going. No big deal. There was no fear. There was no discontentedness. And I was confident that I had eliminated the craving, desire, attachment because it wasn't the fear that arose the first time. Because I put my mind in the situation that it wasn't interested in being in, which is being without this phone. So this was the plan that I developed in order to train the mind to let go of its craving, desire, attachment. All the while, I was using breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity to generally train the mind to let go, but I needed to do this very specific thing in order to get the mind to let go. Another example. At one point, I was drinking a lot of coffee and I was interested in getting rid of the coffee because I noticed that caffeine was causing the mind to be overactive and I was having trouble sleeping sometimes. The mind was, kind of overactive in daily life, and my mouth was kind of chattering a little bit, talking too fast, and I knew that I needed to get rid of this caffeine out of my life. But I was drinking like 3 or 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day, and then this was one of the reasons to move to Thailand. There's like coffee on every street corner, and this iced coffee is very delicious. It's really good for the tongue, right? Like that central desire, the mind really wants that coffee, right? So I needed to start to put some space and distance between me and this coffee. So I decided I was going to get rid of this coffee. But going cold turkey, the mind doesn't usually like it. If you just try to cut it off and you just try to go with no coffee, the mind doesn't typically like this. No matter what the craving is, if you just try to cut it and move over to something else, it usually doesn't like this because it doesn't like impermanence. It's got this craving and it's holding on. So if you can do like little incremental steps, the mind almost doesn't recognize it. It's more comfortable with those little incremental steps in this big abrupt change in your life. So I went like 2 or 3 days without a coffee. And then I felt this urge to have a coffee. So I had another coffee, right? And then I went about a week or so without a coffee. And then I had another coffee. And then I went 2 weeks without a coffee. And then I had another one. And then I got to 4 weeks and 6 weeks. And then I had another coffee, right? And eventually I got to the point where I went 8 weeks without having a coffee. And I started noticing all this arrogance coming into the mind. I was like, yeah, look at me getting rid of all these cravings. Started noticing some concentration coming into the mind. Felt all good about myself. Walked past the coffee shop, smelt that odor, right? And boom, I was in the coffee shop, standing in line, waiting for my coffee. And I knew if I drank this coffee, I was going to get a headache. I was going to have problems sleeping. But I just stood there. The craving was so strong, I couldn't pull myself out of that coffee shop. Got up to the front, ordered my iced coffee, sat down with the coffee, drank about a third or about a half of the cup, and then I decided I'm done with this. And I threw it away, and that was the last coffee I ever drank. But you can go up to that amount of time, 8 weeks without a coffee. And I was like, wow, I'm done with this craving. This is great. And I walked past a coffee shop and boom, I got that odor. I wasn't protecting the mind. The mindfulness or awareness of mind is the protection of the mind, that you can notice that the mind is still craving and longing and yearning. So then what I started doing is I started going to the other side of the street when I noticed that there was a coffee shop coming. But eventually, by the time you get rid of your craving, this isn't going to bother you. You're not going to need to do these kinds of things. But in that delicate time when you're training your mind, you might need to completely walk away to the other side of the street and not take in that whiff of the coffee as you're working to get rid of the craving, desire, attachment. Now I can go into coffee shops. Sometimes students invite me to come talk with them, and they're asking for guidance, and they would like to have a coffee. And I sit down with them in a coffee shop. Maybe I'll order a bottle of water, or I'll order a smoothie or something else. I have no interest in drinking coffee whatsoever, because I know what it does to the mind, and I don't have that craving anymore. But in that time, I needed to put together this plan where I gradually moved myself away from the coffee. But sometimes I felt the pressure building up in the mind, and I needed to kind of release it by just giving the mind a little bit of what it wanted, which is that coffee. It's kind of like a dam. If you have a dam that is holding back water, and you notice the water is coming up on the dam and is putting more and more pressure on the dam, what they do is they open up the dam and they let a little bit of the water out in order to take the pressure off the dam so it doesn't damage the dam. So if you keep allowing that pressure of the craving to come up in the mind, you can maybe bust, right? Because you're having certain feelings, certain painful feelings. So if you've gone a week or so and you're noticing the pressure coming up, you might just need to release some of that by giving the mind what it wants. So I would have a little coffee after about a week, but then right away, I would get right back into it. And I knew, okay, now I'm going to go 2 weeks, and that would be my goal, right? And even sometimes I would give myself a little chocolate bar, or I would take myself to the movies as like a little reward, because the mind kind of likes that praise and reward. That in those times where I was like right on the cusp, I was working towards a 2-week goal, maybe 14 days, but I was maybe like 10 days or 12 days, and I was really feeling that urge to have that coffee. I could restrain my mind because I knew if I got to the 14 days, I was going to go see that movie, right? And even though I could have gone saw the movie at any time, I kind of set it up in my mind that I would only go see that movie if I got to 2 weeks, or if I got to 4 weeks, or if I got to something else. So you can do this with your mind, putting together a plan where you're distancing yourself from the object. The craving, desire, attachment isn't the object. It's not the coffee. It's not the phone. The phone isn't the attachment. It's the longing, yearning inside the mind. So for example, you could be on your way to go hiking, and you could have a liter of water in your car, and you could be 30 minutes, 45 minutes into your hike, and you could realize you don't have your water. And you could be like, oh my goodness, my water, I need my water. And you might rush back to your car, maybe even twisting your ankle, slinging open the door, grabbing the water, and start guzzling the water because you're so attached to the water. It's not the water that is the attachment. It's the way the mind is longing, yearning for it. Because you could also be out on that trail 30 minutes into your hike, 45 minutes into your hike, and realize, I forgot my water. I need to go get that. I'm going to be out here for 6 hours. Let me take myself back to the car, get the water, and then we can go on our hike. And you calmly make your way back to the car. You calmly open the door, you get your water, and you go on your hike. So the water isn't the problem, right? In both examples, the water is there. So it's not the object that is the craving. It's what's going on in the mind. It's the longing, yearning for this object, which is the craving, desire, attachment. So the unenlightened mind is a master at craving, desiring, being attached to anything and everything. You can even be attached to water. Even though this is something that you need, the mind can have this longing, yearning. So this process that you follow is using this discontentedness as the red light on your dashboard. The mind's really worried. I'm fearful. I'm so fearful. There's something going on here. There's fear arising in the mind. Now, as the mind calms down, step 2, you start reflecting on that. What is the mind craving? What is the mind longing for? It's longing for the phone. It has a craving for the phone. That's why that fear arose, because it's craving for this phone to be permanent. Number 3, what are we going to do? Okay, put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. Start going out without your phone and extend the amount of time that you're outside. Start going around being without your phone sometimes. And that'll train the mind that you can be with the phone and go outside and be peaceful and joyful, or you can go outside without the phone and you can still be peaceful and joyful without the phone. So you're going to need to do this with all the various cravings, desires, attachments that you're observing, and using that discontentedness as the red light. And where you need help, you come to the mechanic, and the mechanic will help you to be able to understand what your cravings, desires, attachments are. And then you'll build that skill over time, and you'll be able to then identify these more and more easily yourself. So any questions on this process of identifying? Yeah, you can use the mic.
Just if you wouldn't mind to use the mother being beaten up or something like this as an example.
Sure.
More extreme situations.
Sure. So for all you guys online, the question was, how do you apply this same methodology with like your mother being beaten up and eliminating that craving, right? So in this situation, the mind's craving, longing, yearning, wanting mom to be permanently healthy, right? Or permanently a certain way. And this just isn't possible. Mom's going to get sick. Mom's going to age. Mom's going to have certain things. She's probably not going to get beat up, right? But this thing potentially, who knows? You don't know what's going on in the world. As these things are occurring, this is all impermanence, whether mom's sick or mom's aging or any of these other things. So the way that you eliminate your craving, desire, attachment to an individual, you do what's called reflecting on death. Because what the mind doesn't want is it doesn't want mom to die. It's craving permanence. It's wanting mom to be here permanently. And mom's going to die. It's only a matter of time. Every single one of us are going to die. Our mom's going to die. But with the mind craving and longing and holding on and being attached, when death sneaks up on you, it'll shake you. It'll feel like someone's pulled the carpet out from under your feet, like you've been cut off at the knees, whether it's mom or dad or grandparents or brothers or sisters or friends. It'll shake you up because your mind's craving permanence. When you're grieving and you're experiencing sadness at the time of death, it's not actually love that's causing this. The unenlightened mind oftentimes thinks that it's love, but it's actually craving, desire, attachment, wanting grandma and grandpa to be permanent, or mom or dad or brothers and sisters. What love is this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. That doesn't cause discontent feelings because you have this interest in seeing others be well. It's your craving, desire, attachment, your longing, your yearning, wanting things to be permanent, that when people are unwell, now the mind's craving for them to permanently be well. And when they're unwell, then the mind experiences this sadness or frustration. Or during death, this is the biggest impermanence that you can experience in a relationship when somebody dies. So this death is going to occur whether we agree with it or not. But when there's craving in the mind, the agreeable contact is, I want grandma to be alive always. And when grandma dies, this is impermanence, and now the mind grieves because of that. So what you do is this reflection on death, where you close your eyes, you sit somewhere quietly, and you envision that mom or whomever, any relationship, you can even do this with animals or pets if you have pets, where you envision that they die. You contemplate their death. You reflect on their death. You're not aspiring for them to die. You don't want them to die. You're not interested in them dying, but they're going to die. So you kind of play out in your mind as if they have died. Maybe a police officer has knocked on your door. Maybe a doctor has called you, or a nurse has called you and informing you that your mother has died or some other person in your life has died. And now you play that out in your mind. You kind of go forward with what you would do. Would you organize a funeral, or would you go to a viewing, or would they be burying her in the ground or cremating her? You're not planning it, that when this occurs, this is what you're going to do. But instead, you're convincing the mind that this has occurred. And now you train the mind to confront this impermanence and let go of the cravings, desire, attachment. So that now by the time you get to the end of this 10, 15, 20-minute session, you might actually be grieving. You might actually be sad. You might be frustrated. And if that's the case, then you're doing this and it's working. And you're doing it in the way that I'm describing, because as that craving is being triggered and you're starting to confront this impermanence, you may get sad, you may start to grieve, but then you do it another time. Maybe you wait like a week or two or a month, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, then you do it again. And each time you do it, you're going to notice your discontentedness becomes less and less and less. And maybe on the third or fourth or fifth time, you're going to notice like, wow, okay, I just understand mom's going to die, and that's okay. I'm going to enjoy my time with her. I'm going to be very kind and very loving with her, but yeah, she's impermanent. She's not permanent. And what I experienced when I did this is, after I got to the end, I realized there were certain things I never said to my mom, that if she had really died, that I never said them, and I would feel regretful that I never said these things. And then that there was also things that I needed to hear from her that I would have never been able to hear from her if she truly would have died. So after I calmed down, I called my mom up and I was like, hey, Mom, how you doing? She didn't know what I was doing. I was like, hey, I've been always meaning to tell you, blah, 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 blah. I always am meaning to ask you, da, 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 da. What are your thoughts on this? And why did this occur during our childhood? And, these kinds of things. And then I got that information. And then from that point forward, it was probably another, I don't know, maybe 25 years before she actually died. So that by the time she died, there was no grief. There was no sadness, because my mind had let go. Everything from the time where I did this in my early 20s until the point that she died, it just felt like bonus time. It felt like extra time. And I did this for my grandmother too, and she hasn't even died yet. But I did this at the same time, her and my mom. And I felt like everything from that point forward was just bonus time. And all these problems that I had with my mom when I was a child, I had a lot of resentfulness based on things that happened in our childhood. Even in my early adulthood, I had a lot of resentment towards my mom. I started clearing all that up with that particular technique, but with some others as well that the Buddha teaches. You can train your mind to let go of this resentment or hostility that you might be holding on to for certain people in your life. And this is one of the ways to confront that, is to confront a person's death, do it internally in the mind. You're not aspiring for them to die, but you're just confronting it, because death's going to come sneak up on you. It's going to sneak up on you. But this is a way that you can confront death on your terms, that you can decide, confront this. And when your mind's pretty stable, you're feeling pretty good, okay, this is a good time to do it. And then your mind might grieve for a period of time. So you might wait a few weeks or a month or so before you do it again. But you're confronting death on your terms instead of allowing death to come sneak up on you. So you can do this for anybody in your life, any being in your life. You can even do it for yourself. If you fear death, like if you have fear for your own death, you can contemplate your own death and reflect on your own death as if you have died, and now play that out over multiple sessions. And this will help you to get comfortable with the impermanent nature of this life and other people's as well. You're welcome. Yes, sir. We have multiple mics around. You're welcome to use those.
Hello. Yeah, okay, so I'm reflecting a lot on my attachment to, so I'm wondering if you can point to a plan where I don't have to go bankrupt, but still let go of the
Sure.
attachment to money.
The best thing to eliminate a craving, desire, attachment to money is, one, recognize the impermanent nature of this money, that it goes up and down, and anything you acquire through the money isn't going to provide lasting satisfaction. So if you're craving and longing and yearning, wanting more money, realizing that, okay, that's not ever going to lead to happiness. But also over here, not having any money and not pursuing any growth, that's not going to lead to any beneficial
fear
result.
of not having money.
What's that?
The fear of not having money.
Yes. Not having the money, that's not going to lead to a beneficial life either. So you'd like to come to this middle way where you're gradually pursuing certain career goals, certain financial goals. So the way that you train your mind is, first you understand that, then you put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. What the mind wants to do is it wants to hold on to this money, and it wants to see the bank account keep growing and growing and growing. So what you do is you practice generosity, but you do it in small increments and you do it frequently. frequently. If you are here in Thailand or you're living in Thailand or you're going to be here for a while, you'll notice that there's plenty of places, whether it's at the supermarket or at a temple or other places, even restaurants, they will have places that you can practice generosity. Even the ordained practitioners, they walk down the street each day and you can even offer food to them. So there's all these options where you can practice generosity, not just here in Thailand, but in other places as well. But you need to practice generosity even without craving, desire, attachment, because as you were alluding to, if you have craving to practice generosity, you'll deplete your own resources and you don't have what you need. So if you're on that side where you can't provide your own basic necessities, there's not going to be peace and joy there either. So if you give frequently, it's going to be very helpful for you. And oftentimes that means giving in smaller amounts. Even if it's like 10 baht or 20 baht or 100 baht, just frequently throughout your day and throughout your week, just giving little small amounts. The more frequently you do it, the more powerful it is. Whereas if you gave like one big amount once a year, it doesn't have the same effect as if you give smaller amounts more frequently. And you can do this in many different facets. And this will train your mind to let go and not crave and hold on to money and see it as something that is going to be fulfilling long term. That you're willing to do some work and do some effort for the benefit of others without any expectation of anything in return. Mm-hmm. Yes, you're welcome. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
David, you mentioned about how to eliminate or how to get a little bit of fear. Mm-hmm. So using the example of your iPhone. Yeah, so it's happened to me as well. And then it reminds me how to get rid of the fear. So sometimes in my life it happened. Mm-hmm. And then, so what I remember is, I was working at the time then. And also at the same time, really, so I really like to participate in a good workshop, and it's about the workshop. And then overseas then, and then so I have to have the off day, at least 2 weeks or even maybe 1 month, and then so I really I have to tell my boss. But what if I lose my position or even my job? Then, but I really need to participate the workshop. So it's kind of fighting in my mind. So okay, I give up. The plan B is I give up joining the workshop. Plan B anyway, to negotiate or just tell. So honestly. So I really need to participate workshop. So I like and it needs some off day. So what I did is I really feel anxious, and then kind of agitation or anyway I didn't feel good. So up to I talked to boss my plan. But what I did is I practiced my friends, and then my friend is the boss, and I am me. Then and while practicing, my fear a little bit got better. Then mm-hmm. Anyway, I decided to tell to my boss. So I needed some certain off days. Then. So the consequence is, my fear or I afraid a lot of stuff was in vain. So my boss really accepted. So my applying then. And how long? And then and also I said, okay, it's not only one time, so maybe a couple of times a year, I might participate at to the workshop. And so she said, actually, so, okay, so if it's really needed in my life, so actually, so she pleased to give off day. So I didn't lose my position or work. So I learned a little bit, but actually, so that's a lot of fear, a different kind of fear. So basically, I wonder how to get rid of or eliminate. So
Okay.
you said so training. So mind need training.
Yep.
But basically, how to get rid of.
Okay.
Thank you.
So all the things that I'm teaching here is in addition to what I've already taught in this program and other classes, courses, and retreats. The breathing mindfulness, meditation, and generosity needs to be continuous and ongoing. But then as part of that Eightfold Path, you're learning about mindfulness and awareness of mind. And any time a discontent feeling arises, you would like to cut it off and let it go. This is the first thing that talking about here and even here is that those four foundations of mindfulness are when you're noticing the bodily sensations associated with discontent feelings arising. So if there's fear, there's going to be some bodily sensation. Before the mind becomes fearful, there's going to be some bodily sensation. And you would like to cut that off and let it go as a bodily sensation. Then if you don't cut it off there, it's going to become a feeling in the mind. You can cut it off there. Then it's going to start affecting the condition of the mind if you don't cut it off. And then it feeds these mental objects, which with fear, it's typically the central desire that, that the mental object is being fed. So anytime in life that you're noticing discontent feelings arising, you would like to cut them off and let them go. And that's why you're training in meditation to be able to do that. But early on, it's very challenging to internally cut it off and let it go. So oftentimes you need to redirect the mind. So for example, if you're sitting on the sofa and you're watching the news and you're starting to notice frustration arising in the mind, rather than just sit there and dwell in that frustration, the better thing to do is redirect the mind. Go out for a walk. Go for a bike ride, go get a glass of water, redirect the mind. That cuts it off and lets it go so you don't allow the mind to have the conditioned feeling. So the same thing is true when you're noticing fear. When you notice fear arising, you would like to cut it off and let it go. And sometimes it means redirecting the mind. And as you do that more and more with your meditation and generosity, you'll get to the point where you can internally cut it off inside the mind. You'll notice that there's these bodily sensations occurring and you can cut it off and let it go. And then what I'm teaching you here is in addition to all of that, is you can put the mind in the situation that it fears. So let me just take something more simple because I'm not sure that I understood 100% of what you're talking about, but let's take a fear like a fear of spiders. This is a common one, or a fear of snakes or something like this. Sometimes people have those fears. Well, that fear is the discontentedness. That's cluing you in, the red light on your dashboard, like, hey, you've got some craving, desire, attachment here. You're noticing this fear coming up whenever you see a spider or you see a snake. Well, now you start reflecting. What is the craving, desire, attachment? There's some permanence that the mind's craving. Well, it's craving to never see a spider. It's craving to never see a snake. Okay, that's not possible. As long as you live on this earth, you're going to see other beings like this. So now you put the mind in the situation. This is the plan. Now you put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. You start looking at pictures, maybe on the internet or in a magazine or something like this. You start looking at pictures of spiders or snakes or whatever it is. And now you do that multiple times. And you might notice the fear coming up and you have to cut that off and cut it off and cut it off. And now maybe you increase it even further. Once that starts calming the mind and the mind's pretty calm just looking at pictures, now you increment it up. Maybe you go to like a museum or something like this where they have preserved spiders or snakes or something like this. And now you start looking at that. And now when you notice the mind can maintain its calmness there, now you might actually go out and see real spiders that are alive or snakes that are alive in various settings. And what you're doing is you're desensitizing the mind to the thing that it fears. So you're putting the mind in the situation that it fears. And now what you'll notice as you do that, the mind will become more and more calm. You'll let go of this craving. And that's where the focus and the concentration and the clarity of mind's coming through, because you're letting go of more and more of this pollution solution. It's not the concentration or the focus and the clarity in the mind. The meditation is helping you eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments. The generosity is helping you eliminate the craving, desire, attachments. As that pollution is coming out of the mind, this is where the focus and the concentration and the clarity and the memory is coming in, because you have less and less pollution in the mind. And therefore, the mind becomes more and more peaceful. So by putting your mind in these situations, along with all those other things that I mentioned and I've taught in other programs, this is what's going to help you eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments, and get to that peace and joy. So if you can take what I just shared and apply it to your situation, because I'm not understanding it 100%, or if you'd like to talk after class, maybe you can help me understand better, and then I will give you more specifics based on your unique situation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions or any other discontent feelings that you guys are experiencing that you're interested to be able to help identify the cravings? Because what you guys are already starting to do is what I have as the very last thing for us today is I usually have this little group activity at the end of our talk where students are invited to share what are your discontent feelings that you're experiencing. And if you can identify the cravings, desires, attachments, great, you could share that. And then in addition to that, if you could share any kind of plan that you might put together, this will kind of help you develop this skill. Or if you can't figure these out, it's okay. You can even share that. You can say, David, I'm having all this fear and I don't know why. Every time I see a spider, I get afraid. What is the plan that I should maybe put together? So this is a little group activity that I usually do at the end of this talk. And you guys can do this if you like. You're not required to, but if you would like the help and you would like the ability to develop this skill, you're welcome to share either here at the temple or those of you guys online. You're welcome to do this if you like. Is there anybody that has anything they would like to share, maybe trying to figure out to build this skill, or do you have any questions on anything that I've shared? Yes, sir.
Was earlier this week that I noticed I had a craving or attachment to some bracelets. Remember I shared that? Mm-hmm. And I decided to not wear them one day. And since then, I've kind of not been wearing them. And like it felt really freeing at first. And then when you were just talking about the coffee thing, it made me like they're in my backpack, and I'm like, I really wanted to put them on, and so when you were talking about it, I put them on, I'm like, oh no. So like, it's like you were saying, like I did it and then reflected on it and realized that, oh no, I don't need that attachment in my life. I just want to share.
Yeah, that's a great example. So like sometimes you might have certain jewelry, right? Like certain rings or earrings or bracelets or necklaces or things like this. And every day you put it on. And it's great to wear these kinds of things. And there's nothing wrong with wearing these kinds of things. But if you're doing it every day, you might notice that your mind gets attached to it. Like, how would you feel if you don't wear that bracelet, right? Or if you don't wear that necklace or those earrings, you might feel kind of naked going outside. Or particularly if this ring or this necklace was given to you by somebody, it might have some sentimental value. And now if you leave it at home, you don't feel comfortable going outside without it. And that's what the mind is experiencing in the unenlightened state, is it has these cravings and it wants this thing to be permanent. Well, whatever that jewelry is, it is impermanent. You're going to eventually not be wearing it anymore. You're either going to lose it, it's going to break, someone might steal it, you might misplace it, you might leave it somewhere. It's only a matter of time before this jewelry, you experience impermanence. So if you can leave it at home occasionally, introducing this impermanence like I did with the phone, sometimes wear it out, sometimes leave it at home, sometimes wear it out, sometimes leave it at home. You can get to the point where your mind isn't attached to it. And then ultimately, when you notice that you're just as comfortable going outside without it as you are with it, then you'll know that your mind has eliminated this craving, desire, attachment. Then if you choose to wear it and you just prefer to wear this thing, okay, your mind prefers to wear this thing. But if you just constantly wear it all the time and don't introduce some impermanence into your life, you won't know whether this is a craving, desire, attachment or not, and your mind's holding on to it, and it's just setting it up for some discontentedness at some point. You're going to experience sadness or frustration or agitation when you experience impermanence with that particular thing. So as you're noticing these kinds of things, it's really wise to introduce this impermanence into your life. Even like the location that you're meditating in. I realized at one point I was meditating in the exact same place, which was in my bedroom, and I started to move around. I started moving around different places in my room. I started moving around different places in my house. I started going to different temples and meditating in different environments, at the park, different places, because my mind was getting attached to the location of meditating, right? Even though meditation is a very wholesome thing, you can get attached to that. This is a little bit personal, but I'll share it with you guys. I think we're all friends. I even noticed that my mind was attached to a particular underwear at one point. When I came here to Thailand, I brought all these cotton underwears with me, and I was wearing all this cotton underwear. And my body, my mind was used to having this cotton underwear. And then here in Thailand, I needed to start buying underwear, and they typically don't have very much cotton underwear around. They wear this kind of like neoprene kind of underwear. And I was noticing I was having a hard time falling asleep with this underwear. It would take me 3 hours sometimes, and my mind was just sitting there, just racing. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was like, it wants that cotton underwear. So I just put on the cotton underwear just to kind of fall asleep, because I was laying there for 3 hours and I needed some sleep. But then the subsequent nights, I started introducing some impermanence and started wearing these other underwear to go to sleep, so I could train my mind to let go of this craving, right? So you can even be attached to something like that. Even like a fan, if you're used to falling asleep with a fan on in your room, one day when that fan doesn't work, or it's broken, or you're in another environment where there's no fan, you'll have a hard time sleeping, right? So you would like to introduce some impermanence wherever you see your mind grabbing onto something, whether it's food, whether you're in a classroom and you always tend to sit in exactly the same place, perhaps when you come to the same place over and over and over again. This is common. The mind just craves permanence, and where you see it doing that, introduce some impermanence. Don't let it get that permanence. And this will really help your mind to let go of these cravings, desires, attachments. And you'll experience the more peace and joy, the concentration, and the clarity of mind. Any other thing else? Sure.
Is there room in Buddhism for desires that are non-attachment, or is all desires attachment?
Yeah, so the question was, for those of you guys online, is there any place in Buddhism for a desire that was maybe a healthy desire, right? So the way that we describe desire is the way that I shared here initially, which is this: a mental longing for something with a strong eagerness, the mind pulling towards something. So there's no such thing as a healthy desire or a wholesome desire. What the mind is doing is these words like wants and expectations and desires, we're kind of used to using those and feel like they're normal in our life. Like, I desire for the world to be peaceful, or you might desire for your mom to be healthy, right? And you might think that this is a healthy desire. But if there's a longing and yearning for it, it can't be permanent. And when the war breaks out, if you're craving or if you're desiring for the world to be peaceful, now when a war breaks out, you'll be discontent. So it's a matter of understanding that you develop and come to the middle way where you have a certain goal. You would like mom to be happy. You would like mom to be peaceful. You would like mom to be healthy. So when she has a doctor's appointment, you'll take her. Or if she needs some medication, you'll go get it for her. Or if she needs some healthy food, you'll go get it for her. But you realize in your mind that if you crave it, if you long for it, if you yearn for it, when she's unhealthy, you're going to be discontent. And that's not going to help you. With the sadness and the anger, the frustration in the mind's just shaken up, and you can't make wise decisions because the mind's uncalm. You don't have awareness of mind. You don't have concentration, so you can't access wisdom. But when you remain with a calm mind, then you can have awareness of mind, you can have concentration, you can access wisdom and make wise decisions. So these discontent feelings aren't actually helping you in the world. So there's all these desires or cravings that the mind might have, and being able to see those as unhealthy and unproductive and actually impeding you from being able to make wise decisions, then you can come to the middle where you have certain needs. There's certain needs that you have in the world. There's certain goals or certain objectives that you work towards, but it's training the mind to be able to pursue it as a true goal, as a true need, rather than chase. Because in the unenlightened mind, all we're typically used to is chase. So like the Buddha, he got to enlightenment. He was very successful in his life. He taught for 45 years. He dies at the age of 80. He was very successful at sharing his teachings, but he did it without craving, desire, attachment. Whereas if he was racing around from village to village, if he was pressuring people and forcing people to learn his teachings, if he really wanted people to get to enlightenment very badly, then he would have made very different decisions that would have been unwise and that would have produced unwholesome results. But by him being calm, by him being patient, by him being peaceful, by him just gradually working towards a goal to share his teachings in the world, here we are 2,500 years later still talking about him, because he was very successful at what he did. He didn't want to share the teachings, but he needed to share them. He didn't desire it. He worked for as a goal, as an objective or an interest to gradually share them in the world. And now they're available for everyone to be able to learn and practice. So there's no such thing as a healthy desire. Instead, you would like to pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest, attending to your needs. Sometimes you might even be at a store. I remember being at a store sometimes, and I'd be looking at a pair of shoes, and I'd be like, do I need it or do I want it? Am I wanting this pair of shoes or do I really need it? And ultimately, sometimes I would get to, I just want it. I don't actually need it, so I'm not going to buy it, because I'm just wanting it. Or sometimes I would stand there and be like, actually, I really need these pairs of shoes because my other ones are worn out and I need to buy these. And this is what I need to do. You can do that with your mind and come to that conclusion with your mindfulness or awareness of mind. You'll be able to more easily see whether this is a want or whether this is a need. And now you pursue your needs as a goal, objective, or interest rather than chasing after your wants and your desires. Mm-hmm. All right, it looks like that's everything. EY has a comment here, but I see he's just coming to an understanding of something that's been shared and thanking us for the teachings. I don't see anything else here online of anybody asking any questions. And it looks like you guys are done here as well. So what I'll do to end class is just thank you all for coming to learn. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your participation. This helps to make classes even better as you guys share and you ask questions. We can go deeper into the teachings. Anytime someone is dedicated or diligent to learn the teachings of the Buddha, I really admire people who put time and effort into becoming this better and better person. That's essentially what the path to enlightenment is. It's a self-help program to be able to help you become better and better at all the things that you do. And I really admire people that spend time and effort and energy to put forth effort to become a more kind, more gentle, more loving, more peaceful and joyful individual. So thank you all for coming to learn. As you would like to learn more, there's classes on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can come here at 9 a.m. There's even courses and retreats that I teach here at the temple, and you can even join by live stream and Zoom and these kinds of things. Everything's available for you at no cost. The books, the videos, the podcast, the audiobooks. You can download these things from our website. You can get access to them through various places online. If you'd like to take those books and go print them on your own, you can do that. If you'd like printed versions, you can get them here at the temple, just reimbursing us for the cost, or you can purchase them on Amazon if you like. So you can have access to these teachings to be able to learn and practice and move closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. It's not easy, but it's not difficult either. But with a teacher, with a guide, you can make your way along this path as your own independent journey. If you'd like to attend next week's class on Sunday, we're going to be in chapter 14. This is where we're going to be sharing the 4 healthy mental states of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. I'm going to be sharing with you the symptoms that your mind will experience if you're not practicing those. And then I'll explain to you the remedies and how to apply these in your daily life. This is where the Buddha sometimes gets the reputation of being like a doctor, where you see certain symptoms and you apply a prescription to remedy that in the mind. So you can attend that here or online, and then it's recorded as well. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing loving kindness meditation with students. So you're welcome to come here on Wednesday. And then for those of you guys that are here, you can also ask for personal guidance if you'd like to talk at any time while you're here in Thailand. But even as you travel, there's ways that you can schedule from our website to meet with me one-on-one in Zoom and get personal guidance that way too. All of our resources, all of our classes, all the personal guidance, it's available to you at no cost. So thank you all for joining. Thank you for coming to the temple and deciding today is a day that you'd like to study the teachings of the Buddha. Perhaps we'll see you guys in one of these future courses. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Sawadee khap. Sawadee khap. Sawadee khap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.